here to focus on the building strong community schools. We're really focusing today on the community needs assessment, which is around our objective 2 for this work that we're engaging in this academic year. And so one of the things that I want to kind of frame for us is like how we're thinking about the idea of engaging the community. And one of the things that happens a lot within saying something as a community schools is not being really clear the different components that make up the community school community, right? And all the stakeholders, right? So we have our students, we have our families, we have our school staff, and then we have the overarching community, right? And there's lots of layers to each of these. And so we're going to walk through a couple of these layers and what a needs assessment for each of these stakeholders can look like. Because at the end of the day, what makes a strong community school is when we're building relationships with students, when we're building partnerships with families, when we're building partnerships between school staff and families, and then when we're creating safe spaces for community building, right? And so we're going to really talk through like, what does that really look like to start the needs assessment, to do those things, to build those relationships, those partnerships, and create those safe spaces. So the first thing that we want to talk through is how we set goals for who to engage, right? There's lots of students in the school. There's lots of families in the schools, and there's also lots of school staff. How do you make sure that all of those different stakeholders are getting engaged? And I want to offer up, based on some of the research that CTA has done, a couple of important ways to think about this. First and foremost, part of the reason we set goals is because you really want to be able to monitor how many students, how many families, and how many school staff you're intending to engage. And to do that, it's really important to look at the total population of the school when it comes to your students, your families, and your school staff. And then you want to set a percentage of those families, those students, those school staff that you are aiming to engage, right? So, for example, some schools aim for 50%, right? They want to get all 50% of the students. They want to get 50% of families. They want to get 50% of the school staff. And they would feel really comfortable moving through the process of planning, knowing that the needs assessment has been completed by 50% of the school, right? Some might set a goal lower than that. It just depends on where your school is at within its family engagement structure, right? So, here's something that we want to like help you to really think about this is really making sure that there are goals that you're setting in a chart, right? We all love charts. So here we provide, and we have some handouts for you on this too, where you insert the name of your school. You're going to then look at your student population. You're going to look at your family population, and you're going to look at your school staff population. And then you're going to enter the number for 50% or 75% or 100%, whatever makes sense as your percentage goal, right? And this is going to give you a really good sense of what your goals are for that deep engagement, right? Now, another thing that we want to kind of highlight is that there are subgroups of students, there are subgroups of families, as well as school staff. And so one of the things that we are all clear about is when we say equity, we mean that the students that have the needs that are most unmet by the school or the most unseen by the district, right? That they're really being highlighted and pulled to the forefront, right? So that could mean you're looking at subgroups by ethnicity. You could be looking at it by academic outcomes. You could be looking at it by specific programs, right? Ultimately, you know your school best, and you know what stakeholders typically don't get engaged. You know which stakeholders typically we need to do a little extra work to engage, right? And so this is one of the reasons why we've come up with this chart on the next slide, where we're going to really dive into those student subgroups and those family subgroups, right? So you're going to name what the population is in the tab right here on the top. And then you're going to actually tell us what the number of that population is. So for example, you might say, hey, we have a lot of English language learners at our school. That would be your student subgroup. And you may say, hey, we have 100 students, and we really want to make sure that we get to 20%. That would be at least 20, right? Or if you want to get to 30, that would be at least 30. And you would make sure that as you're doing your needs assessment, you really hit those 20 students in that subgroup. Same thing with family subgroup. You identify the family subgroup. Maybe it's, family members of English language learners. You find out that total population number, and then you do the math, right? So this is really probably the more important part of the needs assessment, because it's getting you to identifying those subgroups that within your school do not typically get engaged, right? And being really clear who they are and how you're going to stay really focused in making sure you're engaging them. So the next thing is, how do you engage them? So you've set your goal, you know your number. Let's keep the through line of like the 100 English language learners at your school. And let's say your engagement goal is 30% of them, right? And you really want to make sure that you're hitting that 30% for students, and let's say 30% for your families. Okay, what are you going to do to engage them? Are you just going to sit and talk with them? You're going to just say, hey, what do you need? Probably not. And so here's where we're offering some language that is formatted in a survey that can be done through conversation, or it can be something that's sent home. So we're going to start with our students. One of the things that people often, I guess, what's the way I want to say it, assume about students is that they can't answer questions around their needs. And what I want to open and invite everyone to really be at every grade level, from kinder all the way up to 12, or excuse me, TK all the way up to 12, to really sit in a space where we begin to believe that our students actually do know how to tell us what's working and what's not working in our schools, right, for them. And I also fundamentally believe that they will and often do tell us what they would want to improve at our schools and why it's important to them. And so we frame these questions really basic so that you can have a conversation at any grade level with students regarding kind of what they want to see in the school, right? And then at the end of it, because we know students have such brilliant ideas and such creativity and such critical feedback, we also want to make sure that we understand what's the thing that's most important to them, which is the last question, and why. The reason we ask the question why on these surveys is because sometimes the why helps us really be able to better understand the need people are trying to express, right? And so don't skip that because, of timing. The other reason we frame these questions in this way is because they can be incorporated into conversations within the classroom. They can be incorporated into after-school programs. They can be incorporated into just a quick one-on-one during recess. Hey, what do you think is working at our school? And there's Google Forms that we've created for all of these surveys so that you can do it on the go. You can do it however convenient it is for you as the teacher or as the parent. Everyone can ask these questions, and everyone can be part of documenting the answers. So I'll move us along. So one of the things that I'll also highlight is why we started with the students is because part of what makes a needs assessment really effective is when you keep a through line across all stakeholders of some core questions. And so what you'll notice is that some of these core questions don't shift, whether we're talking to students, whether we're talking to families, whether we're talking to educators, classroom teachers, school staff, whoever, right? And so as we kind of go to families, same same set of questions are kicking us off. What's working, what's not working at our school. Except we start to go a little deeper with the families and we ask, what does your child need to thrive in school and achieve their highest potential, right? And this gives families an opportunity to really think about two pieces. One, their own child's needs, right? Which most families are really clear what their children need. And then the other, the highest potential, right? Not just looking at what they're capable of doing in this moment, but what we know they could be capable with the right resources. And the reason I think that this is really important is because we want to be able to tap into the things that people might not necessarily think can happen at a school, right? The community schools model is about really stretching beyond just the boundaries of you come to school just to learn. It's really tapping into the potential that schools have to the whole child's development. And so these other questions we're asking families are really pushing them without saying, hey, think about things that you don't traditionally think about in school. We're really trying to open a pathway for folks to expand their horizon, expand their thinking around what could be possible within school. The other thing is, what have teachers done to help your child learn and participate in school? So that's going to help us understand what has been helping. We're going to then ask what resources at our school have helped your family so that we know what has been really helpful. As far as what's already based at the school. And then the last two, what would you improve about our school and why is that important? That's still a through line from the student question. And then the last one is, what's your vision for our school? And though that question can be asked in a lot of different ways, keeping it simplistic is actually really helpful because it allows people to kind of really think about what might they be envisioning the school could do. Right. So now we've touched students, we've touched on families as stakeholders in the school community and how we can go and do those surveys, those one-on-ones with students and families, even how we can incorporate it into different things. Maybe it's a quick one-on-one, maybe it's something incorporated in the classroom. But now let's look at the rest of the school. And when we look at school staff, there's three kind of big buckets that I want to present to you all. There's the classroom teachers, the folks who are actually in the classroom who are teaching our students, right? And shout out to those beautiful folks. Appreciate you so much. There are school staff. So you have your secretary, your office managers, you have your after school staff, you have your school safety individuals, you have just a plethora of folks who are based at the school, support the school to function. You have your principal, your vice principal, depending on the size of your school, so on and so forth, community school manager, all of those individuals we would group into as school staff. And normally they're called classified, but for the purposes of this needs assessment and the way we're framing the community schools model, we're going to say just lump them all into school staff, right? You might also see them in community school literature as supporting school staff or school support staff. It doesn't, just giving you some sense of how that all kind of gets framed. And then the last part that I want to make sure we don't forget around school staff is the actual community partners. So these could be community-based organizations. These could be your health clinic. These could be folks who provide counseling support. This could be your after-school provider, right? So folks who aren't technically staff of the district, but partner with the school to produce services and resources for the school, right? So those are the three kind of buckets of school staff that we want to be able to cover. And we designed surveys to kind of be able to allow each of these to have their own specific language so that they can be able to engage and participate in that way. Okay, so let's take a look. So same thing that you saw with the families, we're moving that a little bit forward with the staff. Not going so deep on on the highest potential question that families are being asked, but still the same through line around what's working at our school, what's not working at our school. But asking folks who work at the school, what has supported you as a classroom teacher at this school? What has supported you as a classroom teacher to partner with families, right? And you could probably even go further with this question. You could ask more, but we kept it really simple for the purposes of this needs assessment. We end with the same thing. What would you improve about our school? What is important to you? And then the last one, what is your vision for our school? And this through line stays the same across all the staff. For the school staff, we just switch out as a staff member at this school, what has supported you, as a staff member, what has supported you to partner with families. And then with community partners, the same dynamic, what has supported you as a community partner at the school, and what has supported you as a community partner to partner with families. One of the things that I might edit, just to be transparent, is to ask also what has supported you to partner with students. That might be a really good edit to add into this survey. So that kind of gets us through the surveys that are individual, can be done on a one-on-one basis and sent home. Then you have all this data. And one of the things that I want to offer to us is around creating safe space for community building. I don't know about you, but as a parent, anytime I see a survey, I want to know the results. I want to know what happened. And so once you get all this information and you've hit your goals and you're super excited and you've gotten students and the subgroups and the staff and the families to participate in the survey and the one-on-ones, it's now time to present that data back out to the community and say, hey, this is what we said were our strengths. And then be able to have a conversation about that and say, you know, are there additional strengths that didn't come up through the survey, and have conversation about what those additional strengths of the school could be, right? And then you're going to get all this data from the surveys and the one-on-ones that say, hey, let's look at what we've lifted up as our area of improvements at our school. And we're going to look at those and then be able to say, okay, well, this is what we said, but what are some additional improvements of our school? And then last, but definitely not least, we're going to look at what we said was our vision for the school. And I think there's more visioning that can always happen. It's always good to see what comes out of the one-on-ones and the surveys, but it's also really good to just do a visioning exercise while you have people. And if you were here with me when I was going over the best practices around like doing the community wide, school-wide discussion, this is a great time to do a dinner, to just say, hey, let's gather. And, you know, food draws our folks, right? Our folks are always been folks who love to share a meal with each other. And so that's a really good way to bring people into this community school-wide discussion. So